If a nation values anything more than freedom, it will lose its freedom. And the irony of that is, if it is comfort or money that a nation values more, it will lose that too. So then now I have to ask the question. In fact, circumstances beg me to ask the question. To what extent have we been valuing too much on our comfort, that we have turned a blind eye to things that make us uncomfortable, things that might seem too hard to fix? It goes way above our heads, it's way over our pay grade, so why should we bother about it? It's because when you leave others to seek your best interests without any sort of supervision whatsoever, you just act in blind faith. Life tends to hit you with lessons to suggest, hey, what did you expect was going to happen? This is Talking Point here on WASN, the Content Capital. Shawn Michael Small, once again, happy to have you to continue the discussion. Important topics with regards to subtleties that impact our freedom, that erode our freedom, 1 degree at a time, less than 1 degree at a time. Or perhaps my interpretation of things is incorrect, the interpretation of others is incorrect, everything is fine, nothing to see here, the house is not on fire. But yet we still complain. And we have many questions. And we have many unanswered questions. And they keep piling on top of each other until it reaches a mountain, and then everybody looks at the mountain and say, oh gosh, it's too high. And the irony again is, instead of trying to chip away at the issues until we eventually solve the mountain of issues, we get intimidated by it, and then we just say, you know what, I'm just not going to try. Because why bother? It's too much for me. And yet one is one of the first things that anyone says when their decision making is challenged in a small scale. As an adult, you can't tell me what to do. But we're fine with having certain things inflicted upon us and not really doing anything responsibly about it. Well, with that out of the way, and yes, I have a bit of a pessimistic attitude this morning, but such is life, right? When you interact with the news, it's hard not to be affected, because generally, news is bad, for better or worse. And while, yes, you could lament the media for not printing more positive news, it's still not going to change the fact of what is bad. It's not going to make it go away. It's not going to allow it to somehow magically solve itself. But maybe I'm preaching to the choir. All right, now, let's start off today's daily review. And we'll get into the wider implications of this later on with the good lady herself. But I wanted to start off with highlighting the new developments. First of all, a few days after complaining, why don't we wait on the probe? We finally know what the probe is going to be. And that is not necessarily the problem. So 2 names have been given to us with regards to a team. I'm not entirely sure if it's a 2-man team or if there will be others involved. Maybe there will be staffers involved or other people formally as part of the probe. But the 2 individuals that have been so named, one is retired High Court Justice David Harris, and the other is David C. Benjamin, a former audit director at the Auditor General's Department and an IT specialist. So it's about as good, unless someone is going to tell me that the former High Court Justice David Harris and the former audit director have ties to a political party. At this point, it doesn't really matter which one. Generally speaking, these names, as far as I'm aware, and I'm not aware of everything, so I'm willing to be stand corrected, these names are fine. You got a judge. Judges, locally at least, tend to have a reasonable record of being independent. Every now and then, government complains about what a judge said. And somebody who actually was in that department, fine. The problem I have is, well, think about it. We have an issue, a dispute between the reported revenue. On one side, you have the Auditor General. On the other side, you have the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance, somehow, it's a dispute between him and another senior government official. And yet, he is going to announce the members of the team that's going to probe something that started off with a mistake made in his ministry. Now, granted, Cabinet is reported to have made this decision. He is just the spokesperson. But to some extent, if you are one of the 2 parties involved in a dispute, how proper is it for you to be then the spokesperson to speak on decisions made of an independent probe that will look into the issue? The fact that he is the spokesperson in and of itself is not a smoking gun. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a bad look because you couldn't even take the time to consider maybe somebody else, even if it is another cabinet minister who's not going to necessarily look that much better, but they still won't be the Minister of Finance. Maybe someone else should be the spokesperson for cabinet on this issue so that it doesn't appear to be blatantly obvious. Think about it. Perception of it being obvious is not necessarily saying that it's obvious that this is a case in fact, all right? Semantics. But it's definitely going to look to people that, hey, so he have a dispute, so he is going to take lead, because generally the spokesperson, if it was a staffer, then obviously the press secretary, public relations consultant, PR representative of X is not going to be the main authority. But when a minister is the spokesperson of something, it's a safe bet that he is taking the lead on that issue with regards to either his ministry or cabinet or what have you, to whatever extent. And this looks like, it doesn't have to be, I'm not saying it is definitively, I'm just saying what the perception can be and is to me, himself unto himself. I have an issue. I will call for an independent probe. I will be part of the process that makes the independent probe, of which I am a party to the issue. And then I will announce the team of the independent probe. We complain when the police commissioner announces that the police will investigate the police whenever there is any suspicion of a police committing any sort of crime or similar wrongdoing. And why is that? The commissioner is not necessarily involved in the situation. The commissioner might not be party to the situation, might not benefit from the situation in any way. But the commissioner is the boss of the people who are then being investigated. And we generally tend to kind of not trust an institution that investigates itself. So the individuals might appear independent. We had a judge, a respected one, as a president. Eventually, the perception of her was not necessarily one of, yes, we're very sure she's independent. So, again, picking the messenger, unfortunately, as I've said before, the government is just not going to get the benefit of the doubt anymore. Yes, your supporters will give you the benefit of the doubt. They're your supporters. That's automatic. That's a given. That's a gimme. That's obvious. Meanwhile, the Auditor General has apparently moved on. She's not waiting. Her legal team filed a claim in the High Court. And I think what she's doing is basically saying, listen, all of the various aspects of this, we need to get the long-term determinations of this. Precedent needs to be set, because apparently one of the issues that the Auditor General has is the situation is somewhat, at least to her, unprecedented, right? I am being asked to accept figures which I cannot justify, nor, according to the letter sent to the ministry, nor can any reasonable justification be presented to me. That's the gist of it. I doubt these figures. I have no reason not to doubt these figures. And these figures came after the deadline. And I think that's, to some extent, also what makes it, when you put everything together like that, it's a little bit unprecedented. Or rather, it has come out that she does not have precedent to follow in this. One would think that this should not be an easy fix if there wasn't a high-profile case before just like this. So I believe what's going on is the Auditor General wants to set precedents with regards to certain rights of her office. And that is to say, with regards to how she's to get legal representation, or at least how that is to be done when the Attorney General cannot represent her, as well as her team is looking to get several declarations which would include her right to protection of the law and her right not to be deprived of such procedural provisions as necessary. So I think a lot of the various other aspects she's looking to get precedence from this, really. It's not so much with the how do we treat it, but rather all of the things that's supposed to insulate her as an independent office holder, regardless of what the specifics of the issue that might cause a dispute with the sitting government might be. So the solution to the actual problem is one thing that we, the public, should be looking forward to. But then also, a lot of the questions now, based on how this situation was handled, precedent to set how future situations like this need to be handled. I mean, this is in part what common law is about and the law is about. So I welcome it, and I hope that we do get an objective resolution. But it's still in the preliminary stages. All right, moving on. Still with, well, our court matters. This time, I didn't necessarily want to speak about it initially, but now I think it's getting a bit concerning because, all right, the judiciary attempted to say it was the DPP's fault with regards to why it's taking so long to proceed with the matter of Dana Sitahal's murder in court. The reason they gave, they're basically saying, look, the DPP said he's waiting on us to send the files back. The judiciary, sorry. And they're basically saying, well, he could have used the electronic platform provided, particularly due to the size of this, in trying to quicken the pace of it. All right, fine. If I have that wrong, you could correct me. The thing is, the DPP is saying, hold on. I can't do that. I can't use digital copies because the law does not necessarily, or might not necessarily accept electronic copies. He needs the original documents. The judiciary is saying it's 8,100 pages of original documents. He's saying, no. The law says that I need the relevant original documents. And he's basically saying, if I don't follow the procedure as written out, this whole case could be undermined from the very start. And what's interesting is, in part of the preliminary proceedings, they already had two defendants had their cases thrown out because it was, I believe it was filed in the wrong court, or it was heard by the wrong, it was heard by a judge when it was supposed to be heard by a magistrate, so it was more or less thrown out on a technicality. Two of the accused, not necessarily the accused for murders, but part of the overall conspiracy who are indirectly linked to this crime. So I can understand what the DPP is saying. Because at the end of the day, this is criminal law. This is not civil law. We cannot just say, well, the court will be reasonable. No. The defending lawyers will basically say, well, look, proper procedure was not done. This is not legal. And a judge will basically say, I don't like it, but why couldn't you just follow proper procedure? But what is also interesting is basically, and one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily want to get into this is, you have the judiciary pointing fingers at the DPP pointing fingers back at the judiciary. Is this, and this is not necessarily something that's surprising, is it? If this was the first time that the office of the DPP was ever in a debate with any other arm of government, well, generally speaking, we would say, well, the situation is otherwise healthy. In the long run, it should be fine. But the DPP, whether rightfully or wrongfully, whether it's his fault or other people's fault, is basically having to battle not just cases in court, but also, for better or worse, various other arms of the government. And again, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. The fact that this is just another situation where the DPP is at odds, and again, he could be right or he could be wrong. That's not the issue. The issue is things like this, for my blood pressure, are happening too much. Maybe it's fine. Maybe other people think this is fine. You know, we should have public disputes by public officials all the time, where it seems as though they cannot necessarily work out their differences and resort to basically saying everything that's bad is the other guy's fault. Again, I'm not saying the judiciary or the DPP are right or wrong. I'm just saying these sorts of disputes are happening maybe too often. Moving on, again staying with the law, this time with the AG, who has had an interesting couple of weeks from my opinion. He now has taken another interesting stance because, all right, it seems as though the information was a leak. The opposition got a hold of leaked information, whatever presented Monday. We saw the news reports on the proposed changes to the firearms bill. And the AG is basically saying that the process was made public and it's being misrepresented as government's policy, and it does not represent government policy, and any attempts to portray it as such are unauthorized and a wrong representation. Basically saying it's not right. They're complaining about something that doesn't exist yet. Well, the thing about it is I'm pretty sure None of the complaints are about what the government has done. It's about what the government is going to do. Why can't people be upset about things that are proposed, that are on the table? It makes more sense to complain about things that are yet to be done, because in theory, there is still time to try to prevent things that are bad, because they're yet to be done. And in theory, in politics, if you wait for things to be resolved and then complain about it, after the process is over, it is a lot harder to then get it changed, because you basically have to go through some degree of the process all over again. And it would be nonsensical to wait for the process to be finished. Now, granted, the AG is basically wanting for us to assume that consultations will go on, and then at some point before we sign on the dotted line, there will be an avenue for dissidents, for complaints, for criticisms to come through, so that that could be a part of the legislation. I don't necessarily know how practical that actually is going to be true. But regardless of whether it came out before you were ready for it or not, it's out. And you can't blame people for the reactions. They have a right to react to it, because they're not reacting on the basis that they know for sure this is what you're going to do. They're reacting on the fact that this is what's on the table, this is what you are considering, and they're basically saying, we don't like that you're considering this because we don't agree with it. I don't really see what the problem is here, and I don't understand why you're making the claim that people are misrepresenting you. You are considering it. They have a problem with you considering it. Now, whether we agree with the logic or not, that's a different story. And to get to that story, let's move on to the next topic. This is going to be a little bit redundant, but I want to reiterate the point, because the words of MP Saddam Hussein was highlighted with regards to the proposed changes to the Firearms Act. And it's about this, well, sorry, this is the same topic. It's about the whole gun-free zone debate. Now, I don't know to what extent they are serious when they if and when they mention all of these zones under consideration, because again, Parliament should be not a place for private citizens to bring their private firearm, whether legal or not. But MP Saddam Hussein brought up an example. And so, okay, a businessman going to the bank, where is he keeping his gun? All right, fair enough. That's a conundrum. I do think, though, that that's a problem for the businessman to solve more than a problem for the government or the bank to solve. Because, again, do we want private citizens to bring legal guns into the bank? The opposition's argument is gun-free zones make it easier for criminals to operate because legal firearms holders cannot defend themselves. Well, what about if I could legally bring a gun into a bank, then as a criminal, I could come in and not alarm anybody with my gun, and then I will be able to easier take control of the situation. Because no one is going to see me with a gun walking into the bank and say, oh my gosh, look, he's going to rob the place. No, I'll just be a private citizen. But that's a borderline debate, right? That's very subjective. What about school? Because he makes an interesting example. Your child got beaten up in school, and we all know what's taking place with violence in school. Fair, that's fair. You can't go to school because you have to go home or to a police station before you can treat the emergency. My child got beaten up in school. I potentially am going to be very upset at the situation. And you think it's a good idea for me, the rhetorical me, to have a firearm going to a place where I might end up becoming very upset. We have seen videos of parents allegedly confronting students with regards to situations like this, right? Think about it. In what world is this a good idea? That a parent whose child potentially got beaten up in school is going to be allowed to go onto that school compound with a firearm. And then if the parent gets aggressive in their anger, not necessarily saying that they're going to use their firearm to do anything, but they're aggressive over the situation because they're angry and they have a firearm. Tell me, how much armed security does each school have in case the school staff need to potentially ask the gentleman to step back or to remove himself from the school premises? What is the principal or teachers going to do if an angry parent is shouting at them and he or she has a firearm on their hip? And what if that parent doesn't want to de-escalate the situation because they're so upset? How is the school supposed to treat with that? What are other parents supposed to want in this situation? I'm curious. Your child has nothing to do with the incident, but another parent who may or may not be upset at another student, at a teacher, at the school itself, is going to come into the school in heightened emotions with a firearm. Can we not see the various ways where this just might be a bad idea? I have no problem if a private citizen has their firearm and they're picking up their child in front of a school, but to go into a school with a firearm, I don't know. Color me crazy. I think maybe that might be fine to not allow. Because if anything was to happen in a school, I don't know how many parents are going to be there standing watch at the exact moment to be able to do anything about it. So the whole, are we saying that the students are going to be armed with legal firearms? So some of these arguments are way too pie in the sky for me. And I don't appreciate it. I think gun-free zones, generally speaking, when you formally say it as gun-free zones, and yes, the precedent might go too far, but I think it's somewhat common sense. No, sir, you cannot take your gun into a courtroom. No, sir, you cannot take your gun into a bank. No, sir, you cannot take your gun into a school. No, sir, or ma'am, you cannot take your gun into parliament. But hey, maybe I'm crazy. All right, we're over time, so I'll end it there. The good lady herself should be here. When we come back, we will get further, deeper into where I started off this morning with the first topic. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Coming soon to WESN.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren. Coming soon to WESN.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process that we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there next to himself. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have two of the three species of anteaters right here.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen. And the good lady herself is here. We want to get a little bit deeper. I was speaking about at the first part of the show. Well, I questioned the Minister of Finance apparently being the spokesperson on an issue where he is one of the two parties that's having the disputes. It brings up questions of the actual independence of the whole probe into the situation. But before we get into that, Karen Eseshera joining me. You got the tail end of what I was speaking about, and you wanted to bring up a point which I think just adds a little bit more information on what's going on with the DPP and the judiciary.
Yeah, and I did hear just the tail end because today's topic, as it were, is to talk about executive overreach. Are we seeing or witnessing a case of the executive dictatorship? And I think there's sufficient reason for us to be concerned. And I mentioned to Sean, because I came in at the end, and the issue with the DPP. Now, I had not read his response, but what I did see, and he then told me what had subsequently happened. I don't doubt that the electronic copies were sent to him in 2023. I don't doubt that the DPP is also saying that he did not receive the copies. And the reason for that is if one throws one's mind back, one of the major considerations was that he kept saying that he's understaffed significantly, 57 persons, 434 positions to be filled, and that his attorneys in his department, the only thing prosecutorial arm, except for now giving legal aid some level of that authority, is really carrying out HR functions, which it should not be doing. And my understanding was that he had come to an arrangement with the Chief Justice that when it came to committal proceedings, that they would be given to him in hard copy. And
hard copy?
Hard copy, yes.
Right.
Given to him in hard, committed with a hard copy. So I guess from his point of view, you didn't send me the hard copy, and I don't think he's being dealing with it lightly. There's a good reason for that. And for the CJ to turn around and say, oh yes, we sent you, but electronic copies. That is after there was an arrangement. So we haven't heard the end of that. But I will tend to err on the side of the DPP. He has never been found to be wanting in any way in his integrity or honesty or any issues regarding himself. And the fact of the matter, he's understaffed. And so we will see how it goes. But what also troubles me, the final point I will make, even if it was sent electronically, does it take you 10 years to do that? I thought the idea was that using electronic was supposed to make it faster. So then that alone raises another issue, but I won't prolong it.
So I just wanted to kind of set this up, because this is not the first time Karen has come to speak on this topic. And that actually is, to some extent, part of the point. This issue is looking at a potential pattern of behavior that has subsequently been reinforced with more examples of the potential pattern. And now, whereas before we were saying, hey, we've noticed something, now we could say, hey, we've not just noticed it before, we're continuing to notice it, and it doesn't seem that there's going to be anything to break that pattern so far. And that pattern is basically looking at situations, Karen, where you could see the government potentially, at least the perception of their interference in things that they should not be interfering, in ways that they should not be so interfering. And we had a caller just yesterday basically kind of looking at it in a similar fashion, looking at some of these incidents and saying these are quite similar, and this looks like to him an overall, well, to paraphrase him, a pattern of behavior. Karen?
Yeah, and actually I wasn't going to start with this, but I will start with the Auditor General, only to say that the Auditor General position and the carrying out of duties and functions are protected by the Supreme Court of our country, which is our Constitution, in particular 116.6, that says that no person or authority shall direct or instruct the Auditor General in the conduct of her duties. So this is just my opinion, but I don't think it is without reason. They clearly want to, in my view, want to get rid of her. They don't want to table her report, because in her report she had a disclaimer. What she did in her report, because it is a she, what she did in her report, she mentioned 2 sets of accounts, public accounts, for the year, ending January 31st, which is the last date for submitting public accounts by the Treasury, which is the Minister of Finance. If he wanted to extend the period because he wasn't ready, he had all opportunity to do so. He clearly did not take advantage of it. But what she has said is 2 accounts. I don't think they expected her to do this. But she has a duty to us, not to him. She's not serving him. She's serving you and me. That's why they have the legislation there to protect us. So let's not get into personalities. Let's get into what is good for the country. And what she did is put in 2 sets of accounts. The accounts, the original accounts, which were submitted to her by January 31st, which was 61 billion. and then she put in amended accounts of 64 billion, and she put the same day, January 31st. That in itself, of course, you know something not right. And then she put a disclaimer that qualified what accountants always do when they're not satisfied about certain things. They put in a disclaimer. She has to protect her own integrity, and this might go all the way to the Privy Council, and she has to make sure that why did you not alert the public to whom you have a duty that something that you were not satisfied. And that is what she said. She said in her disclaimer, which is what they don't want us to see. They said, I do not express an opinion on the public accounts of the Republic for the year ended September 30th, 2023, because of the significance of the auditors described in the basis of the disclaimer of the opinion. Anyway, the bottom line, she said I was unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to form an opinion whether all revenue had been fully accounted for and included in the public accounts. Public account was unable to determine whether any additional adjustment must have been made necessary in respect of recorded, unrecorded revenue. What she's basically saying, after the cutoff date of January 31st, the government, the Treasury, the Minister of Finance, if he was not ready, could have extended, gone to Parliament and asked, listen, we're not ready, give us some more time. I don't think that would have been a problem. He didn't do that. He left January 31st and submitted the 61 billion. Subsequent to that, so we learn, somewhere in March or thereabouts, he then finds out that a mistake was made by the central bank. Now, I suspect, I do not have any thing in proof of it, but between September the 30th to April the next year, which will be this year, 2024, the Auditor General had a period in which she could then prepare the public accounts to submit it to the House of Representatives and the Senate. And during that period, I suspect, I can't put my head on and I'm not going to do that, but I suspect had they come to her during that period, which they did, and said to her, listen, we made a mistake, and this is the mistake we made. And she did go, she says this in her statement, she did go and send her best people, according to her, to verify what the new accounts are, because you have to have proof. If I come and tell you anything, but I have to have proof of what I'm saying. And she said that she was not satisfied that they had provided that proof. Now, I suspect in the past, mistakes may have been made, and when the mistakes were made, they were corrected. So what would have happened is when the public accounts were submitted to the Parliament, you would not see amended thing, you would just see the accounts for period ending 31st of January, because by that time, the Auditor General would be satisfied whatever error was made had been corrected, and she was satisfied with the evidence provided. It is clear both from her disclaimer and the fact that she put amended means that they did not satisfy her, and it is not, she's not answerable to the Minister of Finance. He is not her boss. He is not her boss. The people of Trinidad and Tobago are her boss. And it says so in the 116th of the Constitution, most Supreme Court, that the Auditor General shall not take any directive or instruction from any person or authority. So how are they trying to get around that? How are they trying to get about? Which is my topic about executive overreach. They're in a pickle. Because what are they going to do? She's not dead. Apparently she's not ill. Or the reason that they could use. So I think they do not want to put in accounts. Now I speaking maybe as a politician, and that is what is affecting my point of view. So what they decided, how can we get around this thing? We do not want to send that table that, but we want to get rid of her. So we're going to send up indirectly the Prime Minister of Finance is interfering with her. I want it's going to go to the Privy Council. I want it to reach the Privy Council because I want to hear what the Privy Council has to say, because it is very telling. The terms of reference are the understatement, accounting for the understatement of the public accounts for the period 31st of January. I thought he would have said accounting for the overstatement of 64 post-January 31st, because that is the reality. And nobody has questioned that she didn't get that in March. Nobody has questioned that. And nobody has questioned that she went and looked and sent and was not satisfied. So that is what you're supposed to be inquiring into. And the way you frame the terms of reference, you're already prejudicing people's minds against the Auditor General as best as you can, because you cannot go after her under 106 And I think the idea is that when they give the report, they're going to find her guilty of gross misconduct and remove her and never table those accounts.
I just wanted to jump in there because people might think that you're arguing semantics and it's not. And the fact of the matter is, no, it's not, because basically it was framed, the team is appointed to investigate the understatement of revenue. Now, you could argue, yes, you could try to interpret that neutrally, saying, well, yes, that was what the error that the Ministry of Finance made, assuming that the second revenue figure is correct. They still made the error, but because, like Karen pointed out, you're basically taking it from that slant already. You're not necessarily looking at the overall situation of what happened. It can potentially prejudice someone, whether intentional or not.
No, this is intentional.
Well,
please, don't be listen, sorry, it's
for
something wrong.
For those that don't want to believe it's intentional, I'm just saying it's not good even if it wasn't.
Okay, so let me tell you why I will say it probably not is intentional. You have to watch this government's modus operandi, right? And let us look at some examples that we will want us to come to that conclusion. One of them is the head of the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission was going to court to say that he was under-resourced, he was underfunded, he could, and now it's just coincidental, I'm just saying coincidental, the issue of whether the Prime Minister received as a gift, that, was it a gift or not, $400,000 in Tobago, $400,000, which is only,
discounted.
Discounted, not only that, but then it affects his stamp duty. Now, was that a gift or not? No, it's just coincidental that as soon as his office, he was in court, he got pro bono. He had lawyers working in pro bono because they weren't giving him the money. And he was going to court to get the court to give him the money and to fund him. And as soon as his term of office expired, end of that story. Heard nothing more about it. So that is something. Then you have Jawala Rambaran. Jawala Rambaran, who was the Governor General from 2012 until 2015 when this new government came into office. First of all, he had to go what they called an order certiorari, which was really to get the minister to release documents to support his case because he wasn't releasing them. And he got the order in his favor. Having gotten the order in his favor, in January 2022, he was found that his dismissal as Government Secretary was a wrongful dismissal. Devendra Ramprasad was a lawyer. He said his constitutional rights and protection of law and fair hearing in accordance with fundamental justice were breached. This is what the court said. So I give you the Jawala Rambaran. I give you the case with the Integrity Commission. Let's go to.
Well, hold on. I just want to highlight. This is not wrongful dismissal of a clerk or a maintenance worker. This is wrongful dismissal of the governor.
The officers. I'm dealing with the officers.
Right, I know, but so people can understand. Yes, this is not just some low-level functionary. This is a senior government official that was wrongfully dismissed.
And this is the court telling them that that his constitutional rights and protection of law and fair hearing in accordance with fundamental justice were breached, and the decision to dismiss it was illegal. That is the court. Thank God for our court. Thank God for the judiciary. So that's Jawala Rambaran. That is the head of the Integrity Commission. All of a sudden, the case went dead as soon as he Then you have the Commissioner of Police. The Prime Minister eventually came out and said, yes, I was the person in the room. Now, come on. Let us say the Police Service Commission head came there with a report. And from all what we have been told, and I'm not no admirer of, what's his name?
Gary Griffith?
Yes, so it's not, I'm not saying it in favor of him at all. I'm talking about our
the
rights.
Process, yes.
Yes, and I'm talking about protecting our constitution, our rights. And it seemed that he was at the head. And how it is too coincidental that the day that Ms. Trott, as the head of the Police Service Commission, came with a list to the president, who under Section 126, I believe, or thereabouts of the Constitution, had no other job but to take that list and prepare the notification and send to Parliament. All of a sudden, she says, the list was immediately withdrawn. How could he withdraw the list? You had no authority to do that. When they wanted you to appoint someone to act as Commissioner of Police while they were sorting out who was to be Commissioner of Police, you wrote a letter to the Police Service Commission and said you were a creature of statute. you have to operate within the four bounds of the law. So why you didn't operate within the four bounds of the law and just do what you're supposed to do and let Parliament fight it out? And it just so happened the Prime Minister, who had audibly and consistently before that date made it very clear he did not want Gary Griffith to be the next Commissioner of Police. Then we have the Brent Thomas case where Barbados apologized to us. The Brent Thomas case, I mean, it is disgraceful. Disgraceful, whatever. I am not taking up Brent Thomas case. He was a supplier of guns and he also did trading and so on, not only for private sector but also for the government. He left the country on October the 3rd, according to him, to go to Miami to seek medical attention to come back. When the police, who had issued at least 7 warrants to search not only his home in Hayden Park, but where he carried out his business in Aranguez, when they found out that he had left the country already, they had to have backdated the warrant for his arrest, because when they got the agreement that they could go ahead, it was October the 5th. By that time, the man was not in the country. There's a process. You have a whole process for repatriation. What did you do? You got the Barbados government, which apologized, to go in the man.
And the AG advised his government to settle.
Yes.
So I don't know if they actually paid
yeah,
yet.
But that's to tell you how they knew what was done was wrong.
Right.
You knock on the man's door in the morning, take him, put him according to the evidence in a 10-foot cage, put him there, humiliate him, take him to the Granty Adams Airport, have a plane, which is not a commercial plane. Who gave him the authority to bring this plane? And take this plane, bring him back to Trinidad to charge him. Something not wrong with that? Something not wrong with that?
Yeah, because someone had to pay.
Something not wrong. So you have the Brent Thomas case. Then you have the councillor's case, which went to the Privy Council. And they wanted to interpret the legislation.
This is local government council.
Local government. What the government wanted to do is extend the time for the term of office of councillors from 3 to 4 years, which is not what was provided for in the law. And the question was, did it apply to incumbents, people who already held the position, or did it apply to the future ones? And the Privy Council took them to task. I mean, took them, I ashamed for them. I ashamed for them. Honest to God, I wanted to give you the exact words they used. Yes, I tried to get the paragraphs. He said, a democratic society would necessarily engage other rights, freedom of expression and association, for example. This is the Privy Council on that matter. But the election of representatives for a fixed or maximum period is the, oh, I can't even read my own handwriting, is the something on which it is built. Is the band or whatever it is built. But anyway, 34, which is the paragraph that came afterwards, it is inimical to a representative democracy that representatives are chosen by anyone other than the electorate. It's not for Parliament, still less the government, to choose the representatives. That's the local government election. They get licks.
And they had to call it immediately.
But you understand? Democrat, but I tried to tell you, it is an assault on our democracy. You know what is that? It is inimical to a representative democracy that representatives are chosen by anyone but the electorate. So I gave you the Brent Thomas case. And what about Mr. DPP? Under pressure, left, right, and center, will not give him the staff to be able to do his job. He is the only, except now they gave the legal aid clinic some authority, but his office is protected by the Constitution. No one, I can't remember the exact thing, in section 111 or thereabouts of the Constitution, that says he is insulated from political interference, and understandably, because if politicians had their way, and I'm talking about whoever the politicians are, they will tell him which ones to prosecute, which ones not to prosecute, and which ones to take a time to prosecute. Then you have the industrial court judge. When she was removed, now one has to understand Deborah Thomas Felix. Her term of office had expired, that is true. How did they tell her? They gave her a telephone call telling her that, by the way, we're not renewing you, but that's not the issue. The issue is, if you look at the legislation, and it's section 4.9, it says there's designated and appointed. Now, if you are designated and your term of office has come to end, 3, 5 years, whatever it may be, then you just go back to your job. if you are appointed, which is what she was, what happens is, and that happens in the High Court, a lot of times when they're appointing judges, one thing the Prime Minister, the Chief Judge is going to ask you is, have you won all your matters? Are there any matters outstanding?
This
right?
was a whole issue with one magistrate who was to be
but that is what they do.
Exactly.
Right? Because we don't want you to put you there next thing and then they have to start the matter de novo
Right,
again.
because that's what happened to all the cases that were
Exactly.
before
And
that
it's
judge.
so unfair.
That magistrate.
Right. It's so unfair, especially when at the end of the day, with Akil Charles, he was found not guilty. He spent 6 or 7 years of his life waiting in remand to be told they didn't have enough evidence against him. But the point is, Section 49 said, notwithstanding the term has expired, a member of the court other than a designated, which would be someone who came from the High Court and was sort of lent to the industrial court, a High Court judge then, that's designated, right? With permission of the President, shall continue in office to enable him to deliver judgment or do anything in relation to proceeding that will commence before the term of office expired. So I do not know if Deborah Felix had any matters that were not expired. But I have a feeling there were.
Yes, there were. There's a high-profile one, I think. I can't remember if it's the Revenue Authority case.
Right. So you see how many examples I gave you? I gave you the example of Brent Thomas. I gave you, ask for the Attorney General. I mean, the first one, Faraz Al-Rawi, instructing the head of the Law Commission without a cabinet note to go and prepare legislation. Even you go to the Parliament website, they tell you the procedure. He is the conduit. He might have legislation, but he's the conduit through which the legislation reaches the Law Commission for them to be drafted. But he could only do that once Cabinet has approved it, and Cabinet only approves it when they've done it by a minute, and note which he must give to the Law Commission head and say, look, this is the authority for you to draft. He instructing him to do it without a cabinet minute or a cabinet note because he's the Attorney General. And he come in the Parliament, he come in the cabinet with a letter to have proceedings taken, disciplinary proceedings taken by the Judicial Legal Service Commission against the head of the Law Commission because of his refusal, by the way, a national scholar, by the way, and worked in our department and was extremely helpful in drafting a lot of our legislation, but that's another case, saying that he needs to be disciplined because he refused to draft legislation with the AG told him to draft. And every time the commissioner asked him, the head of the law commissioner asked him for the note of the cabinet, he said, I don't need that. And so there go, and so there he was removed. And then you got this one, Reggie Amor, in Miami, gone to Miami, saying he didn't know he was a senior counsel at the time.
He couldn't remember when he became senior counsel.
He couldn't remember when he became senior counsel, but guess what? The Court of Appeal...
In a court of law.
Yeah, but guess what? And you know, an affidavit is evidence in chief. It's like if you're perjuring yourself in an affidavit, that is what is equivalent to. Well, you know what? It's outside of his control. And it went all the way to the Court of Appeal in Miami, and guess what? They said, we don't believe you. You knew you were. You knew what you were.
All right, folks, we have to take a break here. When we come back, we'll wrap it up, but we have news on the hour now. And when we return, we'll also open up the phone line. Stay tuned.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. U.S. Assistant Secretary for International Narcotics to visit TNT. PTSD routes now available on Google Maps. And internationally, dozens missing after a 5-story apartment collapsed in South Africa. Now for the details. The United States Assistant Secretary for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement and the U.S. Department of Justice Associate Deputy Attorney General will be in Trinidad and Tobago this week to discuss combating illegal firearms and narcotics trafficking. A release issued by the U.S. Embassy confirms that Ambassador Todd D. Robinson and ADAG Michael P. Ben-Ari will meet with senior TNT government officials from May 8th to 10th, 2024 to discuss collaborative strategies to strengthen regional security and combat transnational crime. As of Monday's update, commuters aiming to navigate via public transportation can now access Public Transport Service Corporation routes on Google Maps. PTSC announced that users can view the bus company's routes and estimated travel times once all services are operating as planned, with exceptions for unexpected traffic disruptions. With this enhancement, travelers can conveniently plan their trips around the island by tapping on the transit icon located at the top left corner of Google Maps. Police have detained a man said to be the prime suspect in the murders of 4 men in Cocorit on Saturday night. The incident also left 8 others with injuries. The 29-year-old man, reportedly from Waterhole Road, Cocorit, was held while attempting to flee the country on Sunday night. Police, acting on intelligence received, found the suspect at the Piarco International Airport while attempting to board a plane to the JFK Airport in New York. In international news, efforts are continuing in South Africa to find about 50 people who went missing after a 5-story apartment building collapsed on Monday. At least 6 people have been confirmed dead since the incident in the southern coastal city of George. Rescuers heard from 11 more survivors in the ruins of the under-construction building on Tuesday. They include 4 who are trapped in the basement. The cause of the collapse is being investigated. Well, that's it to News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen. And just before we open the phone lines, we're just going to wrap things up here. Karen is going to wrap things up with a bow, but I'll just highlight the examples that she gave. First of all, we have the wrongful dismissal of a senior government official, the underfunding of various public offices, most notably the DPP's office and maybe the Integrity Commission. Then, of course, you had the Integrity Commission matters that were being before the court that all of a sudden, or matters to be considered to be put before the court, all of a sudden disappearing when the head of the Integrity Commission's contract was renewed. We have the illegal extradition, and I'm confident to say illegal extradition because Barbados is basically saying that it broke their constitution, so I would love to hear justification for it being legal. By the way, one of the officers involved, appointed as a Deputy Commissioner of Police by the current government. Then we had
Local government?
Well, the local government matter, yes, and basically the breaking of procedures for important processes. That's the local government, that's the Auditor General, and then trying to instruct independent office holders, as well as matters before the industrial court, small inconsequential matters like the Revenue Authority and the PSA challenging the Revenue Authority. That's before the head of the industrial court. Does it have to be restarted because she was replaced? Can it continue? Well, to some extent, what will the change in persons, how will that impact the case, even if it can continue? Is it ethical for it to impact the case? Karen?
Yeah, I think, speaking to Sean off air, I think he felt it was important that I wind up or put in context what I had said. And really what I was trying to say is that there are too many instances of what I consider interference by the political directorate in the constitutionally protected or otherwise protected offices that are part of our democracy. It's not about party allegiance or anything. It's about your country and your democracy. And I think I've given enough examples, from the central bank governor to the Auditor General to the DPP. There are so many examples where we're seeing that executive overreach. And it's like the proverbial frog in the water. You put him in there, he keeps calm and cool until one day it gets too hot and it's too late. So we did I think it was important at this stage, given the most recent incident with the Auditor General, where it is clear to me that they're trying to find a way to get rid of her.
And you have speculated on similar things happening in the past, and I think it's important to highlight. These are the examples that we know of. Have other things like this not happened before? And when I say before, within the last 5 years, right? We don't know. Can we assume that it hasn't? Can we give them the benefit of the doubt as it hasn't? Well, given the examples that exist, it's hard to do so. I don't think it's reasonable. With that said, let's open up the phone lines. We want to hear from you, the viewer. This is the wider situation. I know Mr. Digicel more or less alluded to it in his phone call yesterday. The fact that we might be, some people might say we're beating a dead horse, but the point is these issues have not been resolved.
And it's going in one direction. And I think what it has done is really question one's lack of confidence or lack of trust in our government. And when, like any relationship, personal, professional, and in this case between the people and the government, I think there is a lack of trust that is mounting. For those who will hold on, well, they're entitled to, that's their right. But anybody objectively looking on will say otherwise.
I would like to know, are you comfortable with all of these matters? Is it that you're comfortable with some of these matters? Is it that when you think about it, I suspect for a lot of people, if the list goes on too long, it will reach a point where they kind of don't want to think about it. It's stressing them out. It's hitting their head too much. They want to go and lie down. Don't talk to me. Oh, God, why had I bring up this negativity in my life? And we kind of shelve it, and we don't necessarily actively ignore it and hope it goes away, but we effectively ignore it and hope it doesn't go away. We have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Karen. I listened to the discourse this morning, and I see some of these matters, or a lot of these matters, as being really inconsequential, based on what the Energy Minister had to say yesterday in his press conference with the audit, the oil audit, energy audit. And all of Trinidad and Tobago should be worried after listening to the Energy Minister's joyful and laughing presentation. To hear that the audit says that we have 11 years of gas left in Trinidad and Tobago, production-wise. We're not talking about the P2 and the P3s, which is the potential and the probable. That is so frightening to listen to. 11 years is a snap of a finger, Sean.
Yeah, I literally just
and it actually put a lot of things into perspective in terms of, let's say, the property tax, the what you call it, the removal of the increase in the tech rates, the increase in the asset rates coming, the removal of what you call it, of the subsidy on gasoline. Trinidad and Tobago needs to understand, revenue-wise, what will happen if it is our revenue is cut by let's just say, if our revenue is cut by 20 billion. What is going to happen in Trinidad and Tobago? And this is something that I hope all of Trinidad and Tobago fully understands this and understands where we are in terms of, and I would like you all to do this, probably on the next show, to actually delve into this, because let me tell you something. People have started to leave this country, and people are going to be trying to leave in droves, because if without that we have, because if you look at our situation, what is the fallback on in terms of revenue? What do we have to fall back on that is big enough for the revenue? If it is, and I'm talking about, and there's a lot of if, or what ifs. What if we don't get Venezuela gas, and you know those things. But this is a situation that people need to keep their eye on and understand where we are in Trinidad and Tobago. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I just want to say that Stuart Young for him to come out and say that is because water more than flour. And the reality is that the dragon feed, the Lauren, the manatee, and all of them are all connected. And they're all connected to the United States and Biden. And the 2 years, and Shell, which says that they want they want to get a license. I don't know, first of all, I don't even know if we have an exclusive license to monetize the natural gas in the Dragon field. Eni and Repsol have built an LNG plant, I don't know if people know that, since 1995, where they provide natural gas and electricity to Venezuela. My point about it is, I think he recognizes that when the Biden said that he cut the cord and said that he is not prepared to go the 2 years, which in any case, what were you doing with 2 years? Which shareholder is going to agree to it on the 20th? If you're reading up on what is going on in the geopolitical world, you will realize that Europe has a huge inventory of natural gas, number one. America is exporting LNG and exporting natural gas. Guyana is awash with natural gas. We are nobody in the game. We are nobody in the game. Yeah. And since we are nobody in the game, you also know that the deep water rounds, 4 out of the 17 were taken up. He's not wanting, for Stuart Young to come out and tell you what he told you is because he knows that things are going from bad, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that he has a license from Venezuela. It doesn't matter if America gives them a 2-year license. It doesn't matter. All those things don't matter at all, because first of all, I don't know if they're exclusive, which I'm sure they are not. What matters is if Shell is prepared to make that final decision to invest in all of these gas fields. And as it is, it's years going on, and they have not done so. So do not only, but you see, you cannot escape, you cannot separate the dragon field, the manatee, the Lauren, and the other one he mentioned. He mentioned something else to give us hope. He knows what the real situation is going on behind the scenes. I am hoping that things will not be that, but it's clear to me that it has reached a point where America is playing hardball, and my God, if Trump comes back into office, Maduro is going to do what Maduro does best and protect his own interests. And we are in real trouble in this country.
And believe it or not.
And he knew it.
Believe
That's
it or
the
not,
hard part. He knew it. He had to have known it.
The incumbent in the United States is not on his own looking so hot. So believe it or not, Trump might just actually be re-elected. That is not something that is impossible because of how unpopular Biden is for two things. One, the economy, right? The minimum wage laws are not working out for some economic brackets, how they implemented it. And the inflation, the food inflation, everything that's going on with regards to the economy.
Yeah,
but then also the Israel-Palestine conflict.
True.
They were pro everybody, and when two of the stakeholders now are at odds with each other, they picked a side. And how they handle the whole thing, but how they handle it, I think, and they allowed it to reach this point.
Even so, you don't understand that Stuart Young,
well, yes,
he's a politician.
That goes to my next point.
He would not have come out and said what he said if he did not know what was going on behind the scenes. He would not have done it.
Believe it or not, caller, the first thing that I thought about is, well, how did he get that estimate? And is that accurate? Is it a highball estimate?
And why is it so negative? Why is it so negative? Why don't you say, even though we only have 11, we're going to be getting Lauren, we're getting this? Oh, you're not talking about that?
He tried to be positive. He said, I think when he said with Lauren, it will go to like 13 years.
But Shell has to agree to a final decision, and Shell shareholders have many choices. You see what's going on in Europe? They are overwhelmed with inventory.
He said with Lauren Manatee, it'll be 20 years. With Laura and Melody.
How long you hearing that story? I'm tired of hearing that story.
So my thing is,
tired?
I didn't necessarily want to comment on it, Mr. San Fernando, because I just have way too many questions.
You have a caller, I think, did you?
No, I don't think. Do we have a caller waiting? Okay, right. I have way too many questions, and I'm not confident that we have a firm grasp of the truth to say what it is.
You mean you and me?
Exactly.
Right? Because
at the end of the day, the government paints certain economic things with rose-colored glasses all the time. So I am left to now speculate, well, maybe it's not quite as rosy.
He would have never said what he said if his back was not against the wall. I am telling you that.
Right.
Because Shell is saying that they want America, Biden, to give them their own 30-year license to be able to do that. And when they get a 30-year license, Shell itself, then they will make a final decision.
Because you made a good point. Coming out of the initial energy crisis for the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, Europe built up its reserves. Part of the reason why the price was so high in those opening stages, because they wasn't just buying for what they were consuming, they were also buying to have the reserves for winter. That's why the prices in winter were stable.
Winter was a warm winter, and they learned the lesson.
So the reserves, more of the reserves was untouched.
And America is providing the LNG and the natural gas and we have Ghana right around the corner. Don't you understand we mean nothing in the grand scheme of things? And Maduro is for Maduro, which is always shown. Look at the arbitral award. He's saying he said it was non-binding, and then he wrote it into the law. You don't understand who you're dealing with? He said that Machado could, she could go to the Supreme Court. And she did go to the Supreme Court, but just like America, where the Republicans are the ones who are in control of their Supreme Court. Well, it's the same way Maduro's men, judges, are in control. It's no different.
Right.
So when she went there and he went through the legal process and they said 15 years she cannot participate, look what happened. He knows we're in trouble.
Also, the minister talked about the refinery and potential buyers, and that's one of the things where I need to see it to believe it.
Why now?
We've been having potential offers and buyers and interest for years, right? We have Shogunas on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here. Morning, caller. Go ahead.
Good morning to all.
Morning.
Hey, I told a friend of mine, pardon me, many years ago, that America is going to have a lot of problems. And right now, with all of that, number one, the dollar isn't worth the paper it's printed on. And there's going to be a lot of trouble, whether or not Trump wins.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's going to be a lot of disturbance in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, and when the U.S. sneezes, then everybody else, catch a cold. So, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but it's going to happen. We just better tighten our seatbelts and be prepared.
Yes,
okay?
That is true.
The thing is, but because especially inflation and food inflation,
I think that has sort of settled a bit with the food inflation.
Yeah, but
also in England it has settled a lot.
It has settled, but they are also experiencing these issues, and we don't know to what extent their economic issues could progress further just in general.
It's a geopolitical war going on with the BRICS, with Iran, Iraq, and all these countries joining BRICS as 20-something members, and they are trading in their own currency because they want to break the dominance of the US dollar.
I understand that, but the domestic economy of America, a lot of people are getting more and more upset, whether rightfully or wrongfully, at the current administration. So I'm not saying that it's all Joe Biden's fault, but voters will, to some extent, perceive you're the guy sitting in the White House, it's going to be primarily your fault. And I think the caller is right. In fact, the thing about Trump is he's so divisive that no matter what practical measures are being discussed, just the attitude that he brings and that his critics bring to him will potentially just devolve any situation into an emotional mess, right? To say the least, which is the last thing you need if you're going to try to repair some of the issues that they're having with their economy and their immigration, employment, you name it, right? Immigration is affecting to some extent the job market, as well as state budgets, various government
But come
budgets,
back to
etc.
Trinidad and Tobago.
But
we are in trouble. And
Right.
you know what is the hard thing about it? Because we have spoken about it. I bet you we'll go back to a year ago when we talked about this. I bet you we had the same sort of discussion.
We've had it every
right?
year.
Right.
Every year.
And all the time talking about the volatility of oil and gas, right? And your minister has gone out and misrepresented. I understand he's a politician, and so his role is to give a positive thing of the government's thing, but he also has to measure that against being a little bit less, be more forthright. Okay, and the fact of the matter that you went and said the 4 trains were operational on the, you know, we can't believe you. We cannot believe you. You went there with a straight face and said that. You talk about how you get a license for Dragon Field. So why you're not monetizing it yet? You cannot do it because Shell won't sign off, and you know that. Why won't you do Manatee and Lauren? You can't do it because Shell shareholders not signing off. Let's get real.
For those who might not have picked it up or weren't there at the time, Mr. Sanford called in and he pointed out what would happen if we potentially lose 20 billion of our revenue, which I believe, just quick math, might be something like a third. Right? That's not something a country could deal with. And 10 years, 11 years, what have you, even 20 years. Let's just go with the best case scenario that Minister Young pointed out. 20 years. The implication is, well, we need to have something else at the end of these 20 years.
How long are we saying that?
Right? Exactly. The thing is, do we have enough time to potentially diversify? Because we're looking at the end. The minister basically, whether he realizes or not, he's pointing to the end point of the gravy train, when it's gonna finally be all over. Something that was a pie in the sky, dog whistle for many years, fine, it's easier to ignore it when there's no definites, right? We know it's gonna happen in the future, but it's not happening now. Well, the minister is basically saying, within 2 terms of an administration, this might happen.
But in all fairness to the minister, I mean, his portfolio is energy.
Right.
He is not the prime minister. And the prime minister...
But Karen, I thought he was minister of everything.
Right, that's exactly so. He and Colin Imbert is the prime minister. He is the minister of everything. And the prime minister has gone into semi-retirement and allowing them to do what they want. That is the impression one gets. I'm very sorry. He's a good public speaker. He jumps out every now and again and talks loud and hard, and he's a very bright man. Then he does his fireside chat without a fireside, and then he talks all his talk, right? And those who want to believe it, believe it. A lot of us want to believe. Nobody likes to hear bad news or believe the bad news. But the reality is, when you are the chairman of the board, the buck stops with you. So you gave him a portfolio as Minister of Energy, and that is his portfolio. And he is trying his best as Minister of Energy, trying his best, and, we'll have question marks next to that. But the point about it is, I think the Minister of Finance has way too much power, and that is because he is the chairman and the Prime Minister is the CEO.
The problem is, you have maybe less than 10 ministers that are actually doing anything actively, right? And here's the thing, a lot of what the government is doing, is pursuing, is with regards to energy. So while it's not necessarily the minister's fault, the focus of the cabinet seems to be that.
No. The focus of the focus of the Prime Minister, who is the leader of cabinet, is that. And that is why, in all fairness, a lot of the other ministers, I am pretty confident that they might have good ideas, they might come with good ideas, they may come with good cabinet notes to do whatever it is for the last how many years, they are not interested. And so when you see silence from a lot of them, they don't want to go the way of Robert Hunt.
The thing, folks, is I have heard this, that government officials who do good work, they are basically complained by other government officials because they don't want to be shown up.
And I believe you I can tell you that is true.
Right? So they complain, he's working too hard.
It's true.
He's making us look bad. Stop him. Stop him.
That's why they talk about
I've heard that
political
about the
intrigue.
government.
That's human nature. Political intrigue.
Within this administration, I'm not talking about something from 10 years ago. I'm not talking something from the partnership either. Let's make that clear. Right? Let's make that clear. So that's what politics is like, at least in this country. Might be in other places. Doesn't excuse it.
I think it's the size of our country. I think it's the size of our country and the interlocking relationship of the players in the country makes it even more of a problem. And the fact that this government had 10 years now to diversify, start something in a serious, not ad hoc way, which they have with tourism, which they have with the agro-industry.
It's not just ad hoc, it's also very minimalistic.
Well, that goes together with it then.
Right. But I want to come back to the point though, Mr. Sanfanello. I understand that this is probably the most pressing issue. But it's hard for me to have confidence that we're going to get the right solutions to this, the most pressing issue, if all the things that Karen spoke about are just kind of like tolerated, right? That is the general modus operandi of the people in charge. How am I supposed to trust that?
And I think
that's kind of decision making.
Mr. Stanvan, I think you should be very concerned about your democracy. Okay, so
because
you should be concerned about it, because one day you will not be able to speak out. One day you will not be able to say what you want. One day the newspapers will have to have headlines, omission and commission. I read all the 3 papers, and it's a good thing I do, because there are things that I read in one that I would have never known about had I not read another one.
All right.
So
we have the last caller, El Dorado. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
All right. Good morning. Good
morning.
morning to the both of you people.
Morning.
You know, I have a issue. I have a serious.
Caller?
Yes, I see you speaking.
No, don't look at the TV. Talk to the phone. There's a delay. Talk to the phone.
Oh, okay. I have a serious problem. I have a serious problem with some of your comments sometimes, especially coming from that goodly lady on the TV there.
Mm-hmm.
She was in government before, and I look like she has a serious problem. Right now, that's what I had to see. Some of the things what she's saying, she criticizes a lot of things, and she was there already. She did no wrong. And I find it don't come over properly. The next thing with Sean, I find Sean what he replays and thing at night and hear how he sounds. Listen to those replays. It don't come over good. That's all I had to say. Bye.
Okay, caller.
And you are entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like my style, that's probably not going to...
And if you don't like my facts,
yeah.
And you don't like the facts,
if you don't like, right, if you don't like my arguments, then we need to have more of a discussion, because I can't just, I can't assume where I'm wrong, and me rewatching myself is not going to change my opinions, right? If it's just my style, well, that's television. I'll just have to live with it. It's hard to not be me when I can only be me. But I understand to some extent your criticism of Karen at least is a bit more not understandable, but it's easier to then treat with, because yes, she was there, but first of all,
she's not there.
Right. She's not there for a lot of things that she's talking about. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I mean, okay, how much accusations do you have on her that could be pinned on her that has, questions that are still there? That's fine. She says bring it on, right? She's calling for the Clico inquiry to be public. So that's the main thing.
Bring it on.
But with regards to the government, a lot of these issues are unresolved, caller. So I get it, you might not like it, but if they were resolved, the main thing that I ask for is not necessarily that the issues are bad, look how bad they are. It's that they're unresolved and there's a lack of transparency to help us resolve them. That is the underlying main issue that I've had for the last 3 years with regards to how politics are in the country, whether it is the PNM, the UNC, the TPP, the PDP, the COP, the PEP, or the NTA, or the HOPE. Well, the HOPE hasn't been in politics. So anyway, with that said, we have to wrap it up there. I do appreciate caller, because it's good to hear people not agree with us. I just would have liked more details so that we could have gone further. But we are out of time, so in a way, in the short run, it probably worked out for the best. We wouldn't have had the time to go into it any deeper. At the end of the day, are we content with where the country are? If you just use results-based analysis, I don't think the answer could be yes. If you disagree with me, call in tomorrow and say so. But, you know, Karen, I just wanted to tell you a quote that I started the show with, because what you just said before the call I found was very pertinent. If a nation values anything more than freedom, it will lose its freedom. And the irony of it is that if it is comfort or money that it values more, it will lose that too.
Excellent.
So,
is that Cicero or is that Sean?
No, that's W. Somerset Maugham, an English writer from.
Well, that's so true.
From the past. That's not Sean. No, Sean is not so eloquent or concise.
Yes.
But with that said, Karen, thank you for joining us.
Sure, no problem.
Right? I want to thank all our callers who called in, even the caller that disagreed with us, because we need that discussion. So feel free to call in next week to further your point. I understand, you know, it's not all, it's a bit intimidating being on national TV or maybe the time frame you were trying to rush things. That's fine.
Yes.
Call in again. With that said,
yes.
Things are, it's hard to say things are going in a positive direction.
True.
So at the end of the day, I'm not saying what you should do, that is to say which side you should pick, but I'm saying that you should be more active, try and be better informed, try to be more engaged, however you choose to do so, once you do so responsibly, whoever you back, whatever you support, whatever issue you champion. If we want to make it a good day, we have to do so ourselves. So make today a good day. Have a good day, as my co-host always says. Remember our allegiance to the Republic. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Happy World Press Freedom Day. My name is Maya Cooper. We're commemorating World Press Freedom Day by exploring the theme Press Freedom in the Digital Age with Minister Simon Dano-Brigger in the Office of the Prime Minister responsible for communications, Minister of Education Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly, along with journalists Ryan Bechu and Crystal Wilson. Since 1993, May 3rd has been recognized as World Press Freedom Day. This day stands as a reminder to both the government and the media entities the importance of upholding the commitment to press freedom. When World Press Freedom Day was first proclaimed in 1993, the current impact of digital technology is almost unimaginable. The growth of digital technologies has changed the dynamic of the journalistic process and what that means for press freedom. Join us as we dive into the relationship between the public and the press, the role of artificial intelligence, and the expansion of social media. When most of society communicates in one space, forms their opinions as well as their political opinions in a space that is owned by one entity, a space that is held to an algorithmic system, I think it is especially important that we discuss it as it relates to holding up the democratic process as well as press freedom. So social media has created this conundrum where it encourages press freedom, but as well as it undermines it. So, Minister Dano-Brigger, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that freedom without responsibility ultimately ends in anarchy. And I think that in there does lie the issue. This proliferation of uninformed opinion that masquerades as fact.
Some of the older people